All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Dr. Vela, and I'm the co-founder of the Performance Rehab Revolution Virtual Summit. I can't wait to talk to you guys today about business and rehab. So I've owned two different performance-based facilities, one of which I'm currently the co-owner of, Move Athletics. And I'm also the co-founder of the Performance Rehab Authority, which is a mentorship program really for rehab clinicians to become badass performance clinicians. So today I'm going to be talking to you about how to make a rehab clinic the authority in their area fast, while also increasing leads, referrals, lifetime value, client retention, and building a kick-ass reputation. And that's why I called this the Move Athletics Playbook, because this is exactly what we do. We know it works because we've seen our Performance Rehab Authority students replicate the results. And I'll share that data later. So I'm going to give you a rundown on how to not only celebritize your reputation in your area, but also how to increase your value as a clinician and of the clinicians in your clinic, and how to ultimately improve profitability, which includes streamlining new hire onboarding while ensuring a quality hire and saving tens of thousands of dollars. There's so many problems in the healthcare industry that keep athletes and active adults from getting the help that they need. That's why we're here this weekend. So that's why a lot of rehab clinicians have begun to leave insurance-driven clinics, because traditional insurance clinics just ain't it. So a new age has come about with performance-based cash rehab, where it doesn't have to listen to insurance, and people can go in and work hard and get the outcome that they want, and they get this one-on-one care, and things are more performance-based, and they can continue doing whatever the thing that they want to do is for the rest of their life without pay. But the problem that many of those rehab clinicians have run into is that they feel imposter syndrome. Not all of their patients are getting better and back to their goals pain-free, or they jumped into starting a clinic because they were burnt out and all the other jobs in the market were the same. And so they just got cornered into starting their own practice with no other option, but they never had the mentorship to truly become the expert that they now have to portray themselves as. And so because they have average skill sets and the service that they're selling is mediocre, their clinic is now just making it month to month, and they're constantly grinding for new clients. So the picture on the left is from my first day going into work in my very own first practice, Forged Physical Therapy and Performance. And the foundation of what I learned here was with PT Biz. They taught me the framework that I used to start organizing my practice, to start marketing, to have all the basic building blocks for my business. And to make money, I had to do three things: bring in new clients, convince them I was worth paying for, and then get them the outcome, right? So in my first practice, I made about $80,000 in the first 8 months, and the following year I made double that. But I was constantly worked to the bone. I was drowning in marketing events, scrounging for new leads, and neglecting my health and my relationships in the process. It was terrible. And I wasn't a great clinician. I was average. People would sometimes just get part of the way better, and I didn't know how to help beyond that. That might look like their pain is better until they hit their 1 RM or until the volume in their training program goes up. And my confidence got low as a PT. I was supposed to be able to help them, but I wouldn't admit it to myself that I needed to take time away from my business to focus on my skill set, because I had a business to run. And that would be the linchpin of my business, as I later found out. And that led me to being frustrated for a really long time, years. And like I said, constantly having to book marketing events and just fight for leads. Because originally I wanted to make 100 grand, and I did that. And then it became not even about making 100 grand, or not even about a revenue goal anymore. It was that I needed the business to survive. I was living month to month. I had staff to support, and I was afraid of failing. I was afraid of getting to that point where there's not enough money coming in and I have staff to pay. So let's fast forward a little bit. When I partnered with Roger in the clinic that I'm now co-owner of, I realized it's an exceptional PT. And I realized how much his clinical process had an impact on business. So he and his staff consistently hit over 75 conversion rates. So somebody comes in for an evaluation and they decide to stick around for a plan of care. That's a conversion. which was something that I had struggled with. My percentages weren't that high. And he had dozens of clients on membership plans. Again, that's impressive, meaning a ton of people were just staying in his ecosystem. So for people who have businesses like my previous one, getting evals, having a hard time keeping people in, average clinical skill sets lead to a higher churn rate, which means people and money are constantly exiting the business. And that drives up the number of required new leads per month because nobody's really staying in the ecosystem, right? And that's the key. I'll save you the story there, but since then, I've become a better clinician, and I'm about to share what we did to systematize this to the business. And the crux of it comes down to this. If you want to be good at what you do, you have to be able to market yourself, brand yourself, know what you're doing to become the celebrity in your area. And doing that means that you'll get more patients in the door. But from there, you have to show them that you're the authority by actually knowing your stuff, by getting them the outcome. However, unless you're good at operating a location and ensuring client experience and keeping organization on the back end, meaning being a great operator and being a great clinician, you're not going to be able to get those patients, keep those patients, and then get more referrals from them. And when my understanding and clinical reasoning improved, so my clinical care, my numbers in business also changed. They skyrocketed. I've been one of the top performing clinicians at Move Athletics, and my stats are more than 50% higher now than they were in my first practice. Let's go through the numbers. So on the left, we have a logo for my first business, Forged Physical Therapy and Performance. I was in the thick of business, deep in clinical care, and just not crushing outcomes with some of my clients. I was average. And I didn't have the processes, and I was winging it with my team. The clinic conversion rate as a whole from opening until before closing it to move was 47%. So that means for every 20 evals we brought in, we kept less than 10 of them. The clinic made $168,000 that year, and I was killing myself to make that happen and stressed out all the time. Like I said, suffocating all of my relationships, and my health wasn't great. So now, what's the difference? What do we do now? How are things going for Move Athletics? Well, the difference is in clinical care. It's in crushing outcomes. It's going from average to great. If a clinician has the ability to immediately establish the authority, make things make sense to a patient, and provide an ultra clear plan of what rehab looks like and why on day one, the numbers are going to be starkly different than they were in my first practice. So the average conversion rate in the clinic at Move Athletics, at worst, over the last 2 years was 63%. So that includes myself, Roger, statistics for new hires when they're onboarding, because we expect it to go down initially, PTs who had poor performance and ultimately ended up not making it with us for that reason, and even marketing ideas that launched and failed, so sales and that kind of thing. Those statistics are all lumped into that number. And again, for emphasis, these are the worst numbers that I could find to give you from Move Athletics. The standard that we uphold as a clinic and at performance reviews of our staff is a 75% minimum. So there's a big difference between these numbers, between 75 minimum, between my 47% of my first practice, and even the 63% worst at our current practice. So again, comparing what I had previously done, my first clinic's best was 47% as clinicians with average skill sets, despite trying really, really, really hard. To now having mastery of a clinical skill set, our worst has been 63%. For my first practice, that 47% conversion rate, like I said, led to $168,000 that year. And versus if I applied the metrics for the worse than the worst of what we do at Move Athletics now, and I just used a 60% here, my first clinic would have made $214,000 as a single provider, all other conditions remaining equal. And all I'd have to do is increase my conversion rate by 13%. Remember, I'm only using the math for a 60% conversion rate, and I'm excluding any continuity offers or upsells like memberships. 60%, which is worse than our clinic has ever done as a whole. lower than our lowest conversion rate on any given year. Literally, if I just went back in time and had the skill set that I have today, I would have made $46,000 more that year at my worst without any extra effort as a single provider. So again, for reference, we went from 168 to 214K by just increasing the conversion rate 13%, which is from getting to the root problem for patients and making it make sense with certainty. Imagine getting 13% ahead of where you are now as a whole throughout the year. Or if you didn't nail it, but you got the gist of it, even 10% above, about 5% better. My clinic that year would have made $185,000, which is an extra 17 grand at just my second year in business, at just 5% better. Would that mean less time on the weekends and evenings doing marketing events? Absolutely. Would 10 to 13% better mean that I could afford to hire somebody sooner to continue growing? Absolutely. If I applied the standard that we hold at the clinic now, the clinic would have made $267,000, which is over 99 grand more than it did that year. Again, without any extra work. So where do we start? What do you have to do? If you're not currently known as the authority, your reputation isn't strong enough yet. If you're not changing lives and giving people that aha moment, then you can have a bigger impact. Before, I was just okay. I was average, but I wasn't breathtaking. I wasn't creating an experience so memorable that people are compelled to talk about it and spread the word. And that's the difference that a skill set that crushes outcomes makes. This part's important, so I want you to write this down or take a picture of it. The only way for you to be the obvious solution in your area is through exceptional client outcomes. And the only way to crush client outcomes is through exceptional clinical reasoning. Listen, anybody can speak to their experience and share what worked for them and blindly apply it to people, but it doesn't work like that. So don't trust me just because of the stories that I've had or the businesses that I've owned. Trust the data that I'm showing you. Because later I'm going to show you how focusing on this one thing helped multiple other clinic locations improve their bottom line. Numbers don't lie. And I think of it like this. Using data to drive decisions is like studying the film for a football game. You use your moves, you watch the play, and then you make them better. So my skill set was better, right? Rogers is great. The clinic was busy. Time to hire. In my people managing role, I ran into the same problem that I had faced with myself when we hired for PTs, which was quality control. Because we knew how critical teaching this skill set was, we then had to ensure every PT or rehab clinician who represents Move Athletics was providing the same level of care. And for new hires who had no exposure to our style of treating before, they would come in feeling like they were behind the curve. They would question themselves and feel like they didn't know what they were doing. So we allocated an extra 5 to 10 hours per week of mentorship to new hires, trying to get them up to speed for months, which, as you can imagine, gets really, really expensive. And if the PTs weren't fully up to speed, and it's hard to teach an entire way of treating someone in just a few weeks with limited time during onboarding, then they lost a lot of current patients. They had poor conversions when we put new people on their schedule, or if it wasn't a good fit to begin with, then, or their performance didn't improve over time, then the business and the employee part ways. Time to hire again, more money lost. And this is what happens in the clinic when somebody gets hired. You have to invest upfront. You have to pay for them to get onboarded and trained. You have to put clients on your schedule and then be reactive in training if there's some disconnect between their skill set and client retention, right? It's expensive to hire somebody, and it's a huge financial loss if that someone doesn't work out. For example, we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars with just 2 poor hires. So our problem was the clinical skill set was lacking, and we didn't want to just hire anybody. And there wasn't time and resources to pay people to onboard as long as it would take to get them up to speed. So we put together a whole course that we now have as a standard for anybody who wants to work for us, something that guarantees someone understands differential diagnosis, clinical reasoning, and knows how to appropriately load someone through the stages of rehab. Those are all things that we make sure our PTs know when they come work for us. So for reference, this is the old way and we're throwing it out. This is the way that's frustrating. It's looping in circles. It's burning the candle at both ends. And it's having all these places in the business where people are leaving the ecosystem. And so then it requires the business to constantly drive in more and more and more people. Here's the overview of the solution. And we're going to go ahead and jump right into secret number 1, how to crush word of mouth referrals, generate new leads, and build raving fans by only changing one thing. So first, we have to start off with the how and the why people even become loyal customers. When are you most likely to give somebody a really good review? People who haven't had great experiences, but also haven't had a bad experience, tend to just say nothing at all. They teeter in the middle. If you had a mediocre experience, you're not telling everybody about it, but you're also not tearing down the business. You're not leaving bad reviews. You're just quiet. If someone enjoyed the company and the experience, but they didn't get the outcome that they paid for, like being able to deadlift without pain, it wasn't a great experience, no matter how much fun was had in the sessions. Because at the end of the day, they're not doing what they want to do without pain, and they're not getting the outcome that they went in to solve. Or they're not getting the outcome for the problem that they went in to solve. So I'll get to the formula in a second. But when somebody has a stellar experience and they get the outcome that they want, they quickly climb that ladder to being a raving fan, which means they'll also speak well of the business. They'll send friends and family, and they'll talk to people about their experience with the business. When someone has a stellar experience, they leave reviews like these. Right? And we figured out the formula to building raving fans, increasing client retention, and word of mouth referrals. And we know the formula works because when you put somebody in the mix that is not a clinical expert, suddenly it stops working. And then when they're no longer there, the output suddenly starts building again. And it comes down to ensuring a clinical skill set of every PT in the practice. I have 4 formulas that I'm going to share and 4 steps to implementing them. And you can see how it takes you from mastery of a clinical skill set to better outcomes. And for our clinic and for the clinics who have worked with us, to increase revenue and profitability. So the first formula is this: when someone has clinical skill set mastery and they meet someone seeking help for a problem, we now have the opportunity to achieve a crushed outcome. That makes sense, right? And that's what a service provides, a solution to a problem. But notice I said crushed outcomes. We have to be specific here because everybody's going to have an outcome. But remember, we talked about the difference between somebody who's going to rave about you and become a lifelong customer versus someone who just had a mediocre outcome. Formula 2. Next, we have to add the experience part. If somebody crushes their outcome, but they don't have a great experience, or if they don't feel like part of the culture, or they don't identify with the brand, we lose and they won't come back. So a great client experience paired with a crushed outcome will give you increased word of mouth referrals, increased client retention, so customer loyalty and trust, and increased lifetime value, because when they stay longer, they pay you more. At Move Athletics, part of the culture that we have is that we're proudly veteran owned. We have American flags and Marine Corps memorabilia throughout the clinic. We've got a clinic dog. We're barefoot. We like to lift heavy weights. That's the culture and the vibe that you get when you walk in, and it's the culture and the vibe that you expect every time you come through the door. So the previous formula led us to the first half of this equation: more word of mouth referrals, more client retention, meaning new leads because the word of mouth referrals have gone up, and more people sticking around, paying you more for longer. So more people are staying in the ecosystem, which means in any business setting, it ultimately means more increased monthly recurring revenue, which is the bottom line. So you're not constantly trying to get new leads in the door. And lastly, we get to formula 4. When you have more monthly recurring revenue and higher profitability, you have an increased ability to grow, scale, or allocate profit however you want. But notice how all of this began with the key component of clinical skill set mastery. Anybody with a license has a clinical skill set, but that does not give it the qualifier that it needs. Average is not mastery. Because without this, we don't get crushed outcomes. We don't get increased lifetime value. We don't get any of the other formulas. Being great at the craft is the key. That's the secret. It's simple, right? Just ensure the clinicians are great in the clinic and the business will thrive. So now I'm going to show you 4 steps to implementing all of this. So to make it happen, you have to take action on each of these next slides. So just make sure that you write this all down. Y'all ready? Step number 1, think about your client experience. How does it feel? Does everybody go through the same steps and stages? Will somebody get the same outcome or experience by seeing one therapist than if they had been scheduled with another? That one's important. Step number 2, think again. Are clients hitting the one goal that they came in for? Are you crushing outcomes or are you getting people mostly better? There's a big difference. Seriously, there's a difference between Johnny running his marathon without knee pain and Johnny got up to 16 miles, got discharged, only to have knee pain come back on long runs. It worked for a little while, but then it didn't hit the one goal. How many people who discharge PT are leaving because it was a massive success and they surpassed their goal, like actually overshot it? If you have staff PTs or rehab clinicians, just ask them. Step 3, what are your continuity numbers? You should already have a pretty good idea, but happy customers stay longer. So how happy are your people? How great is your culture? Are people sticking around? And step number 4, if any one of these could be better, not to mention all of these, turn your entire focus to the service that you're providing. This is the last and most important step. Is your service excellent? Is it doing what you claim it to do in your marketing and in your new client onboarding? Have you kept your promises that you've been making, or are we just kind of making claims and then seeing what happens when people go through? Is the business consistently getting killer reviews of people who are actually in disbelief at how well the service worked, even for them? Remember the ones that I showed you at the beginning. Focus on making the thing that you're selling better. And if you're in the performance rehab area, do your research and find a course that can create a floor, a bare minimum standard for your clinicians to uphold and raise the ceiling. Here's some more numbers for anybody who loves numbers like I do. By following this step-by-step process that I'm outlining for you and working on their skill set, this cash-based PT clinic was able to more than triple their retention rate of new leads coming in the door, more than double their average ability to convert new leads to stay for a plan of care in just 3 months. In Q4, their average retention rate was 25% for evaluations coming into the clinic for people who stayed. The 3 months of 2024 that this individual focused on their skill set, their average package conversion rate had gone up to 63% and is continuing to increase. Their most recent month had an 83% conversion rate. Their revenue is consistently higher than it's ever been. And the number of leads coming through the door has stayed the same. And that one's important because word of mouth referrals will go up last. You have to bring people in, show them that you know what you're talking about, make it make sense for them, get them through the plan of care, get them the outcome. And then as more people do that, that's where momentum builds and you start getting more and more word of mouth referrals. So would you focus on improving the service that you're providing, convert more leads, and have them stick around and to be able to generate more revenue? Yeah. When you reviewed your data, you may have noticed it's more than just the outcomes that need work. It's your membership, it's your conversion rate at the evaluation, and maybe the low number of word of mouth referrals. But before you start burning your business to the ground to rebuild it, I've been there and I'm telling you exactly what to do to save time and money. Look at the service. Look at what the business is selling. People are giving you money in exchange for an outcome, a solution to their problem. And I'm emphasizing this again because if you don't have an unquestionably amazing service, you can ramp up all the marketing, sales training, all the perks to the client experience that you want, and you're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for. I've done all of that. I've revamped the client experience. I've given more gifts to incentivize people. I've enacted monthly check-in calls from PTs, and none of it made a difference to retention and sales when compared to just having a better service and getting the outcome that people want. And if you're not delivering a great outcome you have failed to deliver. So you can see how this is really important, right? How having a great service is the key to business success. Because we did all that and it didn't work. Like I said, I'm trying to save you some of the pain. These are some of the things that we tried before addressing the root problem with some of our therapists, which we'll get to later. But the short of it is this: you can incentivize people all you want to send referrals, to buy more, to stick around. But if it's not good enough for them to stake their reputation on when they're making a recommendation, they're not going to refer to you, no matter how good of a gift you've given them. You can't buy their love. And if it's not valuable to them, they're not going to stick around in continuity and keep giving you money. If we go back to the formulas from earlier, the second one is great client experience with a crushed outcome gives you more word of mouth referrals, client retention, and lifetime value, which means more money. But viewing it like this misses the key point. We're skipping the first step, which has the requirement of clinical skill set mastery meets a patient seeking help for a problem. That's the only thing that can give you a crushed outcome. Without that, the equation is wrong. Without that, we are at the root cause of the problems in business, because you'll just continue treating the symptoms over and over and over again and exhaust yourself in the process. You're just constantly dumping water out of your boat over and over again instead of finding the hole and plugging it. So treat the root of the issue, which is the thing that you're selling. You have to make it bulletproof. You might be thinking, great, clinical skill set mastery. I'll just make my hiring process more extensive, which is great in theory, but there's a number of problems in the real world when we're trying to hire somebody with a great skill set that's already in place. First, there's few well-rehearsed PTs who know what they're doing, who are currently looking to switch jobs. There's also a low number of qualified applicants in the job pool submitting for your job, and the clinicians who know what they're doing clinically, who have likely been out for years, they've already been making pretty good money, and that makes them harder to pay up front, but it doesn't guarantee that they even have the skill set that you want at your clinic. So next, how are we even going to define a seasoned clinician? Because years of experience means nothing if they're not getting great outcomes. On the other end of things, this is something else that I've heard and even said myself. Hiring a new grad because they're not set in their ways and because they're eager to learn and can be molded. Well, great in theory, but that requires endless time and money. You already have onboarding costs, so time to train them. And then if you are now training them clinically, you're either blocking your schedule to do it or paying another staff member to teach them. And so now you're paying 2 staff members and neither of them are bringing in any money during that time. And that compounds over more time because this process takes months. And even then, that's a half-assed approach to mentorship because it's in 1 to 2 hour segments. It's disorganized. There's other things going on in the clinic. Sometimes you start late. Some weeks you miss it. Somebody's on vacation. And it's a terrible way to invest your money for long-term success. And the ball gets dropped. Not to mention, that is also, in-house mentorship is also completely reliant on yours or whoever's teaching's ability to teach and relay knowledge in a meaningful way. Can you answer questions? Is the process consistent to each new clinician? Are they learning the same material? When we relied on that tactic in the clinic, we actually operated at a loss during that time because it takes that much for it to work. It's that simple. So what do you do then? You find a solution that ensures your PTs are trained how you want them. And you use a strategy that saves you money, not the old way. Follow step number 4. Put all of your focus on clinical skill set mastery for any provider that you have, because you need the service that you're selling to be the best that it can be. Which brings us to secret number 2. How to streamline onboarding, ensure quality hires, and maximize ROI without losing tens of thousands of dollars. When I started my business, it sucked to have to let my first person go for underperforming. And the first time, a piece of it was more likely a leadership problem that could have been handled better looking back, but even further at the root of the issue, it was a skill set problem. But I didn't have the right skill set either. We were both average. So my leadership wouldn't have done the job, and no amount of sales and marketing training that I was doing would have fixed it either. And that's my first point here, is that leadership can't fix everything. If someone isn't qualified to do the job and you don't have a way to make them qualified to your standards or to the standards of the role, that person in that role, it won't work. Here's one example. I hired a licensed clinician who had job experience, who after a few weeks of being there said point blank, I have no idea what I'm doing. After confidently going through the interview process and having hours of mentorship per week. So we tried throwing more and more in-house mentorship their way. And we blocked the schedule more regularly. We kept at it with training. That should work, right? No, we did that for months. And the PT wasn't gaining confidence. Numbers were still down. So self-doubt was increasing. And the clinic was continuing to lose clients during that time, meaning we were losing more and more money. So here's a major point. In-house mentorship, even taught by the same instructor of the Performance Rehab Authority, somebody who is a great instructor, who has the baseline knowledge, who knows how to teach and communicate, lacks structure and consistency because it's attempted to be during work hours when there's a million other things going on. The clinic's focus is on patient care and helping patients get outcomes. And while we prioritize self-growth and improvement for our staff, the clinic loses money if the focus becomes to train clinicians. Have you ever heard the phrase, look at your calendar and I'll show you where your priorities lie? The same is true in business. The priority is no longer on patients when hours and hours a week are being spent trying to get PTs up to speed. So money was running out of our business because it also meant that we throughout this entire time, we were blocking both schedules for more regular continued training, meaning less patient care, which is a revenue generating activity. So the profit and loss above our new investment, our new hire, quickly inverted. And the reputation of Move Athletics started to diminish because we were losing a lot of people. People were leaving the ecosystem. And this is a graph of what it looks like when you hire the wrong person. The longer you wait to part ways, the more you're investing in them. So the expenses are going up to try to bring them up to speed, the more the profit and loss report keeps decreasing. You're losing more money. So as time increases, the spending on them increases, and the money that they're bringing in, or the profit margin, decreases. Comparing performance reviews or looking back on the data, which I will share, it all speaks very clearly to what works and what doesn't work. So I have a huge teaching point here. Over the last couple of years, we've made two key hiring mistakes with PTs that cost us tens of thousands of dollars each time. All in, we were close to a $200,000 loss on what we thought were investments for our future, because people are investments. Hiring somebody who has the ability to generate revenue for the business is an investment, and it's the only way to grow is by delegation. So the more providers that you have offering a service, the more services you can provide, the higher your capacity to generate revenue. But what we don't want to happen is a huge loss that can cost you the business, especially huge losses back to back, because that almost cost us hours. So what I want to do is share with you the best process that I've found for streamlining onboarding, ensuring quality hires, and maximizing ROI, so that you don't ever have to have the experience that we did, where you lose tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. So let's dive into the nitty-gritty on common mistakes. This is a list of major common mistakes, but we're going to focus on that last one, which is hiring the wrong person. And it can be for a number of reasons. The person has the wrong skill set. They haven't adapted and learned well enough. They're failing to convert leads. Maybe they're losing current clients. They're not obtaining outcomes for their clients, or maybe they're just not aligned with the values, mission, and vision of the business. And in addition to all of these things, you're paying them for a full-time position as the time goes on, and you're probably also giving them benefits. So as we're doing all of this and you're throwing more and more training in, you can see how the expenses start really rising. So let's look at the expected cost of hiring somebody, whether it's the right or the wrong person. These are some of the costs that you expect to incur. And initially, there's an inversion on the investment. You have to put money into somebody before it starts working out, but then it'll start to level out and rise. But when we hire the wrong person, all these other costs start popping up. More blocked meetings for feedback, time for mentorship to get somebody up to speed, more lost clients, more blocked meetings for feedback, the cost of HR, the blocked time from patient care for more meetings, the cost of time discussing with HR, potentially talking to a lawyer. And then the transition period when the employee departs in both your time and the loss of client experience for any clients that got affected. It's a financial mess. So now we would like to believe that clients will tell us when something has changed, when they're not happy or when they haven't had a great experience, but they won't, they'll just leave. Even if the client has been around for a long time. We've hired multiple therapists, and to ensure quality control, myself and Roger, as owners of the business, have called to check on client experiences with a new therapist. And so we've sent feedback emails, we've done all of it, asking people how their experience has been going. And people have nothing negative to say. It's generally neutral or positive. Because here's the reality of it. If somebody doesn't want to hurt somebody's feelings, they're not going to say anything bad. Most people have a hard time receiving constructive criticism or feedback, let alone dishing it out. They'd rather leave and avoid an honest conversation than affect somebody's job. Remember earlier in the presentation, unless somebody has an extreme experience, good or bad, they're unlikely to leave a review. And the same thing goes for giving feedback. In the cases of therapists that we've hired, it wasn't until they were no longer there that we started getting honest comments about it. Oh, thank God I didn't like so-and-so, along with some other really strong statements or opinions about the person or the care that they were receiving. And this is all actual feedback that we had gotten from clients after clinicians have left. And even strong opinions like that won't get shared when you ask while that clinician is still employed. And so that's why it's important to be proactive. It's important to be watching the numbers because it shows what's happening behind the scenes when people start leaving the ecosystem unexpectedly. So here's the solution. It's up to you to make sure that you have someone who's a good culture fit and who's going to do the work. Seasoned clinicians versus new grads, it's all the same. Somebody can be out for years and have little to contribute in the way of client success. So ensuring quality from clinician to clinician in a clinic is paramount. And it's unreasonable to think that in 1 to 2 weeks of onboarding, you're going to completely upgrade somebody's skill set and make sure that they are where they need to be. So here's the steps. Number 1, you're going to put somebody through your bullshit test. And I don't mean bullshit like these are stupid. I mean that these check the basic boxes. Are they willing to do the basic responsibilities of the role at minimum? Does this human fit your culture? Are they a good human? And so this might be a series of interviews before you've even gotten to the clinical skill set. We have a tedious interview process at Move Athletics for this step alone. Number 2, clinically, you're going to pick a standard to uphold. How do you measure what the standard is? It can't be some abstract thing. It has to be measurable. So draw the line. Have they passed a certain test, but not the board exam because that's permission to play? Do they have a specific certification? And then once they're hired for performance metrics, once they're on, now you have to pick another standard that you have to uphold. What percentages of their caseload hit their one goal? What are their client satisfaction rates? Figure out a way to review them and hold them to that standard. Number 3, don't rely on in-house training or a weekend course to uphold this standard. Because let's be honest, in-house training is messy, it's unregulated, and there's no real plan in place for learning. And it also assumes that the PT or whoever's teaching is great at relaying the info, and even if they are, the focus of the clinic itself is on patient care, not mentorship. So continue monitoring the standard and keep track of it with objective performance reviews. How's their retention? How are their clinical outcomes? Do they have a framework or clinical reasoning process that they're consistently using? And step number 4, now you're going to test their clinical skills. Can they pass your exam for clinical reasoning standards? Do you understand your clinical reasoning standards? We also put our applicants through a mock evaluation. They go through the whole thing from subjective through interventions, and then we ask them about their clinical reasoning process. What led you to find X, Y, or Z? What were you ruling in or out? And we have a very thorough hiring process at Move Athletics because it's not just for somebody who wants a job. It's for somebody who wants this job. And when they can show that they know what they're talking about and that they will deliver exceptional results to our people, that's when we know they'll be successful. So step number 5, when you've found somebody that you like, call references. You always want another person's experience on working with somebody when available. And you can either take it with a grain of salt, you can listen to it, ignore it, whatever you want from there, but do your due diligence and call references. So here's a quick recap. Take a picture of this if you missed it. Step number 1, you're going to put somebody through your bullshit tests. Step number 2, pick a standard to uphold clinically. Step number 3, uphold it. 4, test it. 5, call references. So I told you I'd share how we operate from a 30,000-foot view. So Move Athletics now just uses the Performance Rehab Authority for steps 2, 3, and 4. So go any way that you choose and follow the steps that I showed you for this process, because it's going to save you tens of thousands of dollars at minimum and time in the process. So before, what we would do is we had to find that culture fit, look for arbitrary years of experience, like 2 years minimum, and schedule a ton of mentorship hours to get somebody up to speed. And like you're about to see, that just loses money. At Move Athletics, our standard for conversion is 75%. Earlier, I gave an example with our clinic average being in the mid-60s because new hire performance is expected to bring down the overall average for the clinic initially. And that's why it's important to keep an eye on performance metrics. So these are statistics from when we did in-house mentorship and did not ensure mastery of a clinical skill set prior to hiring, and we didn't have a standard that we were upholding. So this clinician never once hit the standard performance metric that we held, and they had limited membership visits, meaning that client retention skills were lacking. So at $4,100 per patient who works with us, not hitting the minimum package conversion rates lost us nearly $25,000 in 3 months, if you do the math, on top of what it costs to bring new leads into the clinic. Look at the number of evaluations. Those should have filled this person's schedule. In this other example, you can see the additional hours of mentorship per month were at a great cost to the clinic, and the conversion percentages never hit the standard. That cost of mentorship, by the way, a ballpark average rate for 2 therapists for all those hours over 3 months is an additional cost of over $18,000. Compared to someone who received more than just in-house training, there's a big difference between these two individuals, right? And a better profit and loss between these clinicians. If I had to hire between these two, I would pick this person. This individual ticks the boxes. If you follow the process that I gave you, they meet the standard, they uphold it, and for clarity, they've done the PRA certification. All of the data that we have is from people who have or have not done that certification, just because that's what we have available. So do your homework and find that standard that we were talking about for yourself. So here, conversions are great, money's flowing in, profit and loss is good. So this 5-step process is the new way. It's the way that saves you money, costly mistakes, and time, both yours and your employees. Here's another data set. Keep in mind, this is a single provider practice. This person had to kill it with marketing to bring in the number of evaluations that were coming through the door, only to convert about 3 out of 10. That's stressful, right? Like looking at these numbers, it's probably disheartening to know how much work you're putting into your business only to keep 3 out of 10 people. Let's take a look at how this person's doing now. Look at that. This person's numbers have gone way up, and they've made more money with less marketing events and required less leads to do it. So what's the difference? It's skill set. They spent a few months working on their clinical skill set, and that transmitted into confidence. And now they're doing much better and their practice is healthier. That's dramatic, right? This individual brought up their clinic revenue 1.5 times in 2 months, and they're getting more referrals. So these numbers will only continue going up. They made more money with less evaluations coming in the door, meaning clients were staying longer and giving this provider more of their time and money. You might be thinking, this is too good to be true. And of all the other courses I've tried or my PTs have tried, they just haven't solved the problem. Well, have you or your PTs ever taken a course that focuses on a framework instead of the tools? And that isn't a standalone weekend course? One that actually mentors you on your thought process. Courses exist that are different. You don't have to do what the industry has historically marked as the standard. You have to get outside the matrix and forge a new path and disrupt the industry and change the healthcare system. That's literally why we're here this weekend. You can find a course that serves as a mentorship program to make sure that your clinical reasoning or that of your PTs is on point, just use the internet. Of all the standard operating procedures, choosing a standard and upholding it will be the most influential for a practice. And finally, we get to secret number 3, how to create authority in your area without spending every weekend marketing. Listen, there have been so many times I've been at the mercy of how many marketing events I can get to. It's like a last-ditch effort, guaranteed way to get in front of people and convert them if you're good at selling, which in PT or rehab is just making things make sense to someone and offering them to come in because you know you can help. So many times I was going over financials and I looked at the calendar, sent a few text messages, and booked a ton more events before the month ended so that I could bring in more evals with the possibility of converting them into customers who are trusting me for them. And when we were doing a ton of the in-house mentorship and leads weren't converting, we still had people on payroll that had to get paid. I remember the times I sat down with Roger and we booked more and more and more marketing events because our PTs weren't delivering and the in-house mentorship wasn't working. So we would go and we would bring more people in. And then when the leads do come, you do everything that you can to make sure the clinicians are doing their job too. But remember, that's all reactive to the data. And so since the system was flawed, the clinical standard wasn't upheld, and no amount of in-clinic catch-up mentorship can outwork the skill set just not being there. And so the target got missed and we lost money. We pivoted. And for those of you who are deeply familiar with constant marketing events, you get it. It's fun to go when you get there and to be present and meet people and be able to help them and change lives. And at the same time, it's exhausting and it can be isolating. And for emphasis, it's not that they're bad. I love marketing events, but I don't want to go every weekend. So the next step of the process that helps you become the authority in your area is coming right up, and it's teaching you how to do it without going through all that. This is the question that you need to be asking. Any thoughts? You have to celebritize yourself and your clinic in the community. And you do that through personal branding, through having a killer skill set. Remember, clinical skill set mastery leads to outcomes that people are going to rave about. And that is what will build your reputation. So let's dive into the what next, the 2-step process to celebritizing your clinic and your skill set in your area. Number 1, you're going to find people in front of your people, and you probably already have some relationships there. Step number 2, you're going to blow them away with your exceptional skill set mastery, with the results that you can offer them, with the problem that you can solve for them. You're going to blow them away, blow away the people who have the audience, and that's how you can more quickly grow without having to always be in those places. You can create more raving fans in the right places who are going to speak to you. And if you give them the amazing outcomes, they can speak to it in front of their people, and they'll even side with you and support you over the clinic down the street because you gave them this amazing outcome. And that's the importance of strong relationships. It's not how many relationships that you can build in your community, it's the strength of them. So I'm going to hit a couple of hard truths, and I want you to be really honest with yourself. Can you do that? You may be thinking, but I have gotten in front of the coaches, gym owners, and a bunch of them even come see me. That process just doesn't work. Well, the hard truth is that it does work. You just missed the second step and you didn't blow them away. And if you look, there's probably other areas of evidence that you can see that you haven't blown your current clients away. Data doesn't lie. And then if you're thinking, my skill set is good enough, I have a business to run, I don't have time to focus on that anymore. That's exactly the problem. And that was my thoughts 2 years ago. But the problem is that you've lost care that your service is the highest quality that it could be. So take a deep breath, do whatever you need to do to reset and go back to the thing that you're selling, which is your skill set. You need to believe in increasing the value of the service that you're providing and selling to people, or making it so good that people can't say no and that they're going to tell their friends and family. Because if you do believe, and if you do focus on making what you're selling the best or the highest quality that it could be, you'll have more opportunities to spend less time out marketing through the business, and you're going to grow faster. And on the flip side, if you run the business and you're in charge and you're not in client care anymore, maybe you have rehab clinicians who work for you. So level up their skill set and you just manage it and uphold the clinical standard, just like we talked about. And lastly, if this is you, it's not your fault. If you've taken courses, if you've tried them, if your clinicians have taken courses and they've tried to learn, but they're not there, it's not your fault. It's not their fault. The industry is broken. A degree is just permission to play. And until now, it's been a mess trying to piece together a great skill set, but the internet has completely transformed our ability to learn. So pay attention this weekend, digest as many talks from industry leaders as you can, from physical therapy to business, strength and conditioning, nutrition, hormones, absorb it all. We are on a mission to uplift the rehab industry, drive change, and make it better for athletes and active adults from the inside out. I'm Dr. Caitlin, co-founder of the Performance Rehab Authority Certification and the Performance Rehab Revolution Summit. And the last thing that I want to say is thank you. Thank you so much for being here and for being an action taker. And thank you for being part of the change that we all know the healthcare industry needs. Keep leading from the front and driving the change that you want to see. The best place to catch me is on Instagram at Dr. Caitlin Vela. And I'll see you guys at the next stop. I'm looking forward to sharing a really special thing that we put together for you guys. So be sure to keep your eyes peeled on Sunday in your inbox. I'll see you soon.